We've got a special guest joining in on the show this evening, Harsh Mariwala, Chairman of Marico, with his 100-day agenda for the government. Mr. Mariwala, thank you for chatting with us here at ET Now. Firstly, what according to you are the low-hanging fruits that need to be addressed on priority by the new government to improve the sentiment of corporate India?
I would say that invest in infrastructure, because infrastructure, whether it is roads or whether it's power or whether it is water or which is required for agriculture or whatever, wherever there are infrastructural gaps, you need to address that. Number two, you need to improve the ease of doing business, and most industries today are suffering because ease of doing business is very low by any international standard. So whether it's environmental clearances or land acquisition or just administrative reforms which will speed up setting up industries is a very, very crucial step the government needs to take.
You know, speaking of crucial steps, given the back and forth that we've seen on the goods and services tax, are you hopeful that we will see some progress in 2014 on that front? I
would think so, but it's very difficult to predict. A lot will depend on which government comes to power, which party comes to power, and what is going to be the opposition party's stance on this. I think the GST journey has reached a certain level of maturity, I would say, and a lot will depend now what happens at the political level, because many times certain reforms may have support of all the parties, but it becomes a political battle, and I hope it doesn't turn into that.
What about a rollback of FDI in multi-brand retail? Do you suppose that's going to send out a negative signal to industry as well as foreign investors should the new government decide to go back on that?
I would think so, yes. To some extent there will be a negative signal, but I must say at the same time the current FDI rollout in retail is half-hearted. So it is not a very strong signal to the foreign players that FDI is, because there are a lot of ifs and buts there. So it may not be as bad as one thinks, but it will be negative.
Mr. Mariwala, the other big issues, of course, inflation, and everyone believes that the government needs to take a series of supply-side steps. What kind of steps would you urge the government to take to tackle inflation?
I would say a lot of inflation is happening in agri-related supply items. So the Indian food habits have changed over a period of time. Indians are consuming more of dairy, more of meat, more of vegetables and fruits, and that's where there's an imbalance, and that's where the inflation is occurring. So I think overall supply side reforms to improve productivity of these items so that supply increases. Because there is a point, up to a point you can actually control inflation because of monetary policies, but ultimately supply side gaps as they are evident today, unless they are tackled, we will continue having high inflations.
The other issue, of course, Mr. Mariwala, is the damaged relation between corporate India and the government, especially the last year and a half or 2 years. We've seen India Inc. and government almost be at war path. What do you think needs to be done to repair relations between government and industry?
I think the trust is very, very low, I would say, both from industry side as well as the government side. So I think whatever steps are required to build that trust, where the government trusts industry and the industry also behaves in a manner which generates trust, I think is very crucial. Once that trust is built up, a lot of new initiatives can be taken by the government to improve the overall relations.
What about labour reforms? So how crucial do you think they are? Do you think the new government can make any progress on that front?
I wish they had that courage to make the progress, because today what is happening is that organized labour, which forms a very minuscule percentage of the total labour, I mean, they get all the protection, and as against that many others, they are not able to get jobs. So I think it's important that the labour reforms are undertaken. These are bold reforms, but and to some extent some people may not like it, but they are very badly needed in the Indian environment for the Indian industry to succeed. Because otherwise what happens is that if you're not able to have any labour reforms, then automatically the industry goes for a high degree of automation at a very high capital cost, because then the flexibility of labour is just not there. So I think it's important that the new government takes that bold step and works on labour reforms.